When it was revealed that the BBC had doctored a Trump speech to make it seem he incited the Capitol riot, it exposed more than bias. It exposed belief. The belief that deceiving the public is justified if it defeats the enemy. But when truth itself becomes negotiable, who's really endangering democracy? Trump or those claiming to defend it, like the BBC? Hello there, you awakening wonders. Well, there you have it. The BBC tell lies. The mainstream media tell lies. The mainstream media are invested in destroying independent media. You cannot trust them. You never could. Now, it's interesting to talk about this now because Mamdani, a socialist Muslim mayor, is in charge in New York City. And I'll be interested to see how right-wing media exaggerates, amplifies, detracts from, attacks Mamdani. It'll be just interesting because what matters really and where we want to get to is information. You can't trust the media. You can't trust the government. So now just try to assess information. And the idea that there's no objective information, that everything's subjective, that's bullshit. Bullshit. That's why you need God. You need to know that justice is real, truth is real, being a good person is real. Oh, it depends on the perspective. There's some perspectives where it's okay to have a gang. There is no perspective where it's okay to have a gang. Let's have a look at those people we've charged with telling the truth. Remember, the word media just meant to be a channel via which information reaches you. It shouldn't get lacquered up, diluted, polluted and intoxicated with ideology, and yet it seems to. It's been revealed the BBC edited a Trump speech in order to convey a certain story. Let's analyse that and then look at how it applies across the political spectrum and how, as always, what we need is direct control ourselves. We have the means of production. Why are we f***ing around?
They played the following clip.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell.
But Trump didn't, in fact, say this at all. The BBC spliced together two clips that took place 54 minutes apart.
It's amazing that the Telegraph have chosen, right, OK, we need to get the coolest person on the team here at the Telegraph to explain this to a modern, funky audience. Now, what they've done is they've spliced together two clips using the old splicer. Yeah, what film are you talking about? The Keystone Cops? That's just an aside. The central and functional information is, of course, the BBC presented something to you as truth that was heavily narrativized. You'll all be familiar with this clip from The Simpsons where someone's past was used to make them look like a rapist. Hey, why does this seem familiar to me?
Precious Venus. Thank you. Then I noticed she was sitting on the gummy Venus, so I grabbed it off her. Oh, just thinking about that sweet, sweet candy. Oh, crap. Somebody had to take the babysitter home. Then I noticed she was sitting on her sweet can. I grabbed her sweet can. Oh, just thinking about her can. I just wish I had her sweet, sweet, sweet can.
Sweet can, sweet, sweet can. Shagger of the year, dinkle, ball bag. We all know that's how the media functions. So what does it reveal about the media's intention? Now we know they have an intention. What is it?
So let's go through it again.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and I'll be there with you.
Now, see there, between Capitol and, that's a cut.
Oh my God, do you know what's terrifying about watching this? Is that this is made for an audience of, I suppose, boomers and Generation Xers and people my age. And look at the level of hand-holding they need to understand this stuff. I suppose because I've worked in media all of my life and been involved in content creation for a long while. I'm like, yeah, if there's a cutaway, that means that there's an edit. And that means that they're using something else. Right, Massey? Look, man, I have been inside Donald Trump's mouth. No, it's bloody obvious.
Grab her sweet can.
These things are obvious to people that understand media. And what's equally obvious to me, given that now we know, my God, that this is the margin, this is the chasm that we're crossing, the BBC did that for a reason. And the reason the BBC did that is whether you like Trump or not, and whether you agree with him ideologically on what you think he thinks about race or immigration or any of the subjects that can be used to stimulate you back into your numb, dumb ignorance, Donald Trump, whatever he is and isn't, is a problem to the kind of institutional and establishment interests that plainly have total control over the BBC.
Here's what Trump actually said.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
It's different.
It's completely different. Now, here's a prediction. What will happen now is they'll say, oh, one person made that decision and we'll find the one person that made that decision and we'll get rid of the one person that made that decision. But that decision was a reflection of values that are deep within the BBC. Well, let me just ask you, who did the BBC want to win that election? Donald Trump? Yes or no? How do they want you to view Donald Trump? Positively or negatively? So whenever they tell stories about anyone, think about what do they want you to think about that person and why would that be?
It wasn't until nearly an hour later that he then said the second part of the BBC's version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we fight. We fight like hell.
The Telegraph revealed that the BBC had doctored a Donald Trump speech for its Panorama programme, editing it to make it appear though it encouraged the Capitol riot. It confirmed what many people suspected. The so-called impartial establishment media are no longer chroniclers of truth, but active participants in a psychological war for narrative control. Look, man, it's hard for me to talk about something like this because I have been in a personal battle as a member of independent media with establishment media for a long time. Way before the very damaging allegations which ultimately generated charges down the line, because none of the people involved in that documentary pursued anything criminal. There were a lot of headlines that were attacking me in a variety of other ways. Look at all these headlines. So, of course, I'm not impartial when it comes to the corruption of the media and the way that the media present information in order to bring down their opponents. And their chiefest opponents are independent media, because independent media inevitably leads to independent politics. If you start to follow independent media creators like me, forget me, who cares about me, or anyone, people that you barely even have heard of, then their audience share is divided. As well as hearing a lot of crazy stuff, you'll also get access to ideas that ultimately prevent you from being cudgeled, curtailed, and controlled by their interests. You'll start to recognize you don't need brokerage and mitigation in every area of your life. You don't need a layer of bureaucracy wrapped around you. Some people do want it and like it. Remember, during the pandemic period, some people did what they were told, some people didn't. Those people that do what they're told, why don't they live in a democracy that's a little bit more restrictive? Because you can, if you want, by the way, take as many vaccines as you like all day long. Vaccine yourself to within an inch of your life. Then another group might not want to have vaccines. So what makes more sense? Penalise the people that don't want to get vaccinated for not wanting to get vaccinated, or simply acknowledge that you can have different types of people that want to take different types of medication or eat different types of food. We can accommodate all of that. You don't need to assert and exert centralised control over every aspect of our lives. Do you want to support me? No, I don't. Yes, you do. Support me and support Rumble Premium. You won't only be supporting me, you'll get additional access to Mug Club, that's Crowder's gig, Timcast, that's Tim Pool's racket, and Glenn Greenwald's additional content. Join us on Rumble Premium. We make content every single week through Rumble because Rumble support free speech. When I was under attack from the British government and the British media, Rumble stood firm. Yes, of course, there's crazy people on Rumble. There's crazy people everywhere. There's a crazy person living under this hat. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have the right to speak freely together. By supporting Rumble Premium, you're supporting me and content creators like me. You get additional content, and what I will say even more, drink down deep on the delicious irony in this one, you get an ad-free experience. If you want an ad-free experience of Rumble, get Rumble Premium. In the meantime, stay free. The scandal was not just a journalistic failure, it was a moral one. For years, legacy outlets have portrayed Trump not as a flawed political figure, but as a modern-day Hitler, an existential evil against which any manipulation, any distortion becomes justified. In the process, they've done more than just reshape how politics is covered. They've helped reshape what politics is. Not a contest of ideas, but a holy war between the righteous and the damned. This kind of moral absolutism does not arise in a vacuum. It thrives in a system that depends on the creation and destruction of villains to sustain itself. The establishment always needs a monster, someone whose existence can justify its moral authority. Consider Dick Cheney, the former vice president, once reviled as the architect of America's bloodiest misadventures. For years, he was the liberal media's embodiment of evil, a corrupt war profiteer, the dark lord of the Bush administration. Yet in death, Cheney has been reimagined as a tragic hero, a principled conservative whose sole virtue, denouncing Trump, was enough to redeem a career once condemned.
Cheney thing. Do we really have to do that?
Look, it goes broader than that. Look, Bernie Sanders
Dick Cheney, Taylor Swift.
No.
That one. Oh, the shooting?
No.
Having the Cheneys on board?
No. You can't Dick Cheney or Taylor Swift. No.
We're a big tent.
What country did Taylor Swift get us to invade? No.
If you can hold on to these two ideas, you won't go far wrong. One, technology now is so immersive that it can give us the kind of power of gods. And two, the state wants absolute control of that technology. You can see that they want to be God because they are using edicts and principles that only God might deploy. One, they want us to be like children, dependent on them for information and even in some cases, welfare. Two, in this instance, they are claiming the right of canonization, that they can wash away a lifetime of sin, that they can posthumously turn Dick Cheney, one of their worst monsters, into a totem of sanctification. The same rehabilitation was extended to George W. Bush, a president whose wars killed hundreds of thousands, but who now appears on talk shows as a genial grandfather figure, embraced by the same networks that once painted him as a tyrant. The message is clear. You are only as monstrous as your usefulness to the narrative allows. At the heart of the transformation lies a media industry that no longer sees its role as holding power to account, but rather as defining which power deserves to be held. Impartiality has been replaced by moral theatre. The doctored panorama clip wasn't an isolated lapse, it was a symptom of a larger condition. From CNN's obsessive moralisation of the basket of deplorables moment, to MSNBC's relentless portrayal of half the country as domestic extremists, to President Biden's battle for the soul of the nation speech with its red-lit staging and rhetoric of semi-fascism.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
The narrative has been weaponized. Political disagreement is no longer framed as difference, it's framed as danger. This is not new. History is littered with examples of how propaganda, fear and selective truth-telling have been used to manufacture consent and crush dissent. The weapons of mass destruction saga remains a defining lesson in media complicity. Tony Blair's 2003 claim that Saddam Hussein could deploy WMDs within 45 minutes, George W. Bush's mission accomplished banner, the echo chamber that amplified the lies until they became justification for the war.
In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed.
In the McCarthy era, communists filled the same role that fascists and MAGA extremists now occupy, a manufactured enemy so terrifying that reason and evidence could be suspended in the name of safety.
When a great democracy is destroyed, it will not be from enemies from without, but rather because of enemies from within.
When Trump entered the political stage, he became the ultimate vessel for this tradition. His populism, often crude, always combative, made him an easy caricature, a perfect foil for a political class that needed a devil. But Trump's own instinct for division also poured fuel on the fire. His willingness to mock, insult and polarize made it simple for his opponents to cast him as uniquely dangerous. Yet his supporters saw something else, not a saviour, but a weapon against the elites who had long sneered at them. Last, the dynamic fed itself. Each side's fury justified the other, and the media, ever the opportunity, reap the rewards of outrage. But when the moral absolutism becomes the default lens, truth becomes irrelevant. The fine people on both sides controversy remains a textbook case. Trump's full comments where he explicitly condemned white supremacists were edited to make it appear that he sympathised with them. The clip went viral, the myth became permanent, and the division deepened.
And that's when we heard the words of the President of the United States that stunned the world and shocked the conscience of this nation. He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides?
Charlottesville lie. Very fine people on both sides. Except that isn't all he said. And they knew it then, and they know it now. Watch this.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, excuse me, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him?
I do love
Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history. You're changing about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
The same playbook repeated itself after the Capitol riot. Selective editing, loaded commentary, and censorship in the name of safety. As the Twitter files later revealed, government agencies like the FBI and DHS were quietly coordinating with social media giants to suppress dissenting voices under the pretext of fighting domestic extremism. A new kind of orthodoxy was being born. Not state propaganda in the old Soviet sense, but something more subtle and pervasive. A fusion of government tech and media power, all aligned in service of one moral narrative. Meanwhile, the language of dehumanization became normalized. When Nancy Pelosi calls Trump a vile creature and the worst thing on the face of the earth, she's not merely insulting a rival, she's reinforcing a worldview in which political opposition is no longer legitimate.
He's just a vile creature. The worst thing on the face of the earth, but anyway.
You think he's the worst thing on the face of the earth?
I do, yeah. I do.
This rhetorical escalation is not harmless. When every opponent is a monster, violence becomes plausible, necessary, and even inevitable. When every election is the end of democracy, compromise becomes treason. And when one side controls both the moral script and the media megaphone, what follows is not democracy but managed hysteria. The doctored BBC clip is not just a story about a speech. It's a story about the decay of trust, the weaponization of information, and the peril of turning politics into theology. When every opponent is Hitler, every election becomes Armageddon. And when outrage replaces truth as the currency of public life, there are no victors, only believers and heretics. If the goal was to save democracy, then perhaps the establishment should ask what kind of democracy can survive when its storytellers have become priests. If you want to read that article in full, you can do on Substack.
You know, to just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
In a way, that clip's not a big deal. We all know that they lie. We all know they exaggerate. And we certainly know that they edit. What's fascinating is that the technology now exists to hold the powerful to account. As the brilliant book Revolt of the Public excellently describes, the old elites no longer have control and the new elites haven't been fully incarnated. In this liminal space, there is an opportunity for power to change in ways that are radical and interesting. Remember, we can't rely on political ideas that emerged from the industrial age. Fascism, communism. We now have to move to political ideas that reflect our technology, and by God's holy grace, these technologies grant systems that are spiritually beneficial and authentic. Individual sovereignty, community democracy. It's now not possible for Hillary Clinton to just say basket of deplorables and not be held to account. You can't say that the Nord Stream pipeline was blown up by Putin and not be held to account. You can't say that Donald Trump incited a riot and not be held to account. You can't accuse people of things and not be held to account. Media is now in the hands of people. As Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message, and the message is this: media is decentralized, power should be decentralized too. Power belongs to God and God only. Minimize the power of centralized government, maximize democracy. These principles will change the world much more than changing the coloring of the flags and livery of whatever centralized organization you have in charge of your life, whether it's Facebook or Columbia, whether it's the BBC or the Republican Party. You no longer require the degree of centralization that was once beneficial for municipal organization. Now what is possible is mass subsidiarity. Some people will call it anarcho-syndicalism. Some people will call it tribalism. But what people in positions of centralized power will always call it is dangerous, because that modality ends their control. As much as Hillary Clinton may hate Donald Trump, there's no one she hates more than she hates you. As much as the BBC might hate Donald Trump, there's no one that they hate as much as they hate you, your freedom, your ability to change and access information from outside of their narrow purview. But that's just what I think. Tell me what you think in the comments and the chat. Thanks for watching the video. Have a look at this one over here, or join us Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on Rumble.